We're talking about getting rich, and who doesn't love that? Everybody wants to be rich, and practically everybody. But I think the most important question to first ask about getting rich is, well, let's define what your rich life looks like. One of the fun things that I think is most funny about this topic is that most people resort to like default rich, which is the rich that is given to them by Instagram, society, and other people. And their default rich, unfortunately, is so unconscious for a lot of people that they're actually playing this game where they're climbing a ladder of success that is infinite. There is no end in mind for what is enough. I mean, I think Eric was the one, you were the one that pulled that quote out one time. I think we've already mentioned on the pod once, that quote from The Psychology of Money.
Oh, great book.
Kurt Vonnegut, I think, was the author.
Talking to his author friend, Joseph Heller, who I believe wrote Catch-22. And they're at a party thrown by a successful hedge fund manager. And Kurt Vonnegut goes to his buddy, Joseph Heller, he goes, hey, did you realize that this son of a bitch throwing this party makes more money in a day than you ever made from selling your groundbreaking book, Catch-22? And Joseph Heller goes, I do realize that, but I have one thing he'll never have. I have enough.
Indeed, man. It's a fucking mic dropper.
It's incredible.
So the first step is determining what is enough, what is your rich, and what is your enough. I think that's the most important step, and most people fail to recognize that. And I think after discussing this for a little bit, we'll go into like some of our old strategies, but like let's go to, I mean, like what is enough for you? Like has that changed? Has that evolved for you? How do you even define what rich is for you? How does a human being even define that? Because so many people are like, I need the jet, I need $1 billion, I need to be the wealthiest person that I know. But that's like a sucker's game. Like you're going to be, I think, in my opinion, that is an absolute fool's errand. Like it is a terrible idea.
So you want to start with me? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I'm happy to start. I have like an interesting and probably like weird relationship with wealth because I grew up wealthy, and I can talk about how that kind of played in with my ideologies. But like, I also manage money for a living, and we have clients who are wealthy, and they're like young-ish. They're about our age, and they're wealthy. And I think I see commonalities on how to get there before we talk about like what there is. I think like the commonalities I see on how to get there. It's like for people who are aspiring to grow, it's really two things amongst my client base. One, you get equity, and that's either like starting a business, which we all have done and are currently doing, and then the other one, you can even like join a startup and get equity. The other one is like eating what you kill, like sales stuff. Like if you can eat what you kill, and then you go kill a bunch, meaning like you sell and you get commissions. These like commission salespeople often out earn like the executive team, and these are like my client base essentially. So I see that as the
mine always have.
That's the commonality that I see and how to get there. For me, what I describe as wealth is so unique. It's like I am a weird guy that I don't want the jet. I don't desire really things. I am like so far on the spectrum that like I actually like eschew things. I dislike things, and maybe that's like a reflexive type of thing that I have going on inside me, where I just like take on this identity, and then I get deeper and deeper into a rabbit hole on
I've
that.
always felt as a friend that you have a very healthy relationship with money.
It's interesting. Like I think we all want more of it, right? But also like in managing money, you realize like you don't even need that much of it to sort of retire. Like I think Nick's brought up the 4% rule before, where it's like you can spend like $150,000 a year with not that much money and just maintain that baseline. Like getting $3.5 million, it seems like very attainable to somebody who's like a striver.
Yeah.
Specifically somebody who's young, or maybe if somebody's like on their way to that number, it's like, oh shit, wait for ETH to hit all-time highs again, or like fucking there. So like, I don't think of that number being like that unattainable. I think what makes it feel unattainable is like you see just like exorbitant wealth, like Elon level wealth, and you're just like, oh, how do I get that? And I think people kind of fall into the trap where it's like, okay, well, I have my 4 million, but it's like, well, what about 10 million? And then like they take more exorbitant risk to get to the 10 when when they were ready, and now they've squandered the 4, and it's like, oh fuck.
And I don't think we're talking about hedonic adaptation this week, but I mean, talk about the most dangerous form of hedonic adaptation. Yeah. Like money is the root of that.
I have a question for you. Like, I mean, you grew up around money, wealth, but you're not like the typical, I guess, stereotype for that. Like I would actually put you more on the frugal side of like how you spend your money or what you choose to spend your own money on. You're not extravagant by most means, I'd say. Do you know why that is? Like, because I've seen other friends who are, you know, but their level of standards for
they don't
lifestyle are like so much higher. Like their bare minimum is
way higher, and
high.
They don't value it. And Eric really values it.
So I think you brought up this term "rich life" that comes from what's his name, Ramit. And something Ramit said, because I follow him too. Ramit says something that like spend extravagantly on what you actually desire, but then cut mercilessly on things that don't really mean anything to you. And I take that into account. So when people see the frugality, it's like, well, I just don't want any of that shit, you know? So I just spend zero on that. But then if it's like, we want to go take a trip somewhere, I'm like down every time. Yeah. Right. So that's what I value. I think, you know, I brought up this like duality of how to get rich, which is like equity or sales, and I'm really ignoring this third category, which is what my sort of like wealth, my lifestyle wealth is all based on. Like my mom worked at the same company for 35 years from the bottom, and then ultimately became CEO of like a Fortune company, and that is not the path that I see today, but that's certainly a path. I lived it, you know, like I saw it firsthand.
Can we break this down a little bit into more of an algorithm that Nick would like?
Nick's already broken it down.
Okay, so here's how I see it, right? Like step one is you have to decide what rich means to you, right? Does rich mean I want like a lot of money, or does rich mean like I want a lot of time without stress, right? Do I want to meet like a certain threshold for my lifestyle, but then I just want to be free, right? Those are two very different goals, right? And they require very different strategies, right? So if your goal is like, I want to be like really, really rich, I want a lot of money. Now I may think that that's a counterproductive goal, but like, let's just ignore the philosophy of that, of whether that's like good or bad, right? If you want to be really, really rich, you need to turn your money over at like an incredible return rate, right? Like, so I crunched some numbers on this, right? So if you're 21, you have $1,000 and you want $5 million by the time you're 40, right? You have to basically like add $1,000 a month in savings and then grow at like a 25% IRR, right? Which I think is doable if you are a hustler and grow a business, right? That's your path to 5 million from basically nothing. You can also take like a sort of more grindy approach. Like if you don't want to be insanely rich, but you want to be very, very comfortable, right? Start with $1,000, average like 8,000 a month in contributions, get like a pretty cushy job. You're not going to make $1 million a year, but maybe you make like 200 or 300K a year. You save it. This is like the dentist path we've talked about. You get a nice, very high paying job. That's your ceiling, not getting the jet. You do that for till you're 40, boom, $5 million, right? Then there's another path, which is not necessarily like kind of growth savings focus, which I think is like more just like cutting costs focused, right? And this path I think is really interesting to me for people who are like, I don't want to be phenomenally rich. I can live off of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. I just want to be free. And maybe that doesn't even mean like I don't want to work at all. It just means like I don't want to have to work 40 hours a week at a job I don't like. And I think this is like an interesting path. This is like, have you guys heard of Mr. Money Mustache?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Money Mustache, I don't follow anything that he says.
Yeah, I don't follow anything.
Like
I literally couldn't cut my expenses in half if I tried.
Like full
No
disclosure, I have opted for the path that says, okay, I could do all this cutting or I could just make more money.
Same.
Like I've opted for the path
Every
of
time.
let me just figure out how to make more money. If you're not like an entrepreneur, that's not a good path for you though, right? Like you may want to be like, I want to work a job. I want to move up the ladder. I'm good at this thing. I don't want to take on all this risk. I want to follow this path from 21 to like 37. And then I just want to opt out and I want to go do my own thing after. So Money Mustache is like really great for that type of person. Like he advocates for saving, I think like at least 50% of your take home, right? Up to like 70%, like pretty extreme. And I think conventional wisdom was like telling people like 10, 15%, right? But it's kind of remarkable, like if you run the numbers on this, right? Like if you make like 75K a year average from the time you're 21 to 37, which is not that hard in the US as an average across like 16 years, right? You can have 1.1 million by 37 just by saving that and cutting stuff and just not doing dumb stuff. And like for a lot of people, that's amazing. And you're chill, you're free, right?
Particularly if you don't live in San Diego, San Francisco,
California,
New York, Hong
yeah.
Kong, Vancouver.
London.
Yeah. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm curious what you guys think are like the biggest leaks people have. When we play poker, we talk about leaks or things you do that like cost you money over and over and over again. You got to plug those leaks or you start losing eventually. Like I know he would say like the biggest leak people have is around like cars and transportation. Like biggest hack is to live close to where you work and take public transport and bike and not I see so many people spending like $500 a month on a BMW and another $250 a month on insurance and spend like $9,000 a year on their car and they don't make like $1 million, and that's like an insane like compounding leak to me. Like that seems like priority one. Don't do that. Like, well, what do you guys think?
It's a good question.
The
I mean,
largest mistakes.
My leak is really obvious, and it's like an intentional leak. It's travel. I've easily spent 7 figures in travel. I mean, easily.
I wouldn't
like-
say that's a leak though. Okay, so let me redefine leak because
Yeah.
I think the end goal of money is sort of freedom, but ultimately it's like I want to be happy, right? So I think that spending money on travel for a particular type of person wouldn't be a leak because it is genuinely giving them happiness.
But it is if my goal is true. Like I still want the Money Mustache outcome, but at the whatever a multi 6-figure level of passive income, right? So the more I can sacrifice, the faster I can get there. And yet so many of us make intentional decisions to defer that because we're mortal. And we, as you said in the beginning, like you'd rather not sacrifice certain components of your lifestyle. It's really hard to do that. So I'm not sure the exact definition you were going for there, but I know for me, like I intentionally choose to spend money on things that make me happier, knowing that it's going to take me longer to get to certain outcomes that I have. But in a weird way, I'm okay with it. Like I obviously am okay with it. I'm not doing it accidentally. So that's an odd balance too. So it's like if your goal really is to get rich quickly, again, you have to go back to the goal. What does rich mean to you? And like for me, it is freedom. It's not this like just make as much money as possible to spend as much money as possible. That's like a form of slavery to me, like that literally. So sorry if I detoured that, but like
No, I don't think it's a detour. I just don't think like spending money on travel is necessarily a leak if you're just doing the thing that the whole point of why you are trying to get wealthy gets you to anyway. Along
yeah,
the way.
it's like that's exactly it. I think about it as like the Mexican fisherman parable.
Yeah, I guess like, do you agree that like cars are like the biggest leak people have when they're younger?
I think cars can be if it adds to your fixed costs. You know, if you want to buy a car, like a luxury item, like something more than just your basic transportation, then you should pay for it in cash. Like you shouldn't increase your fixed costs. I actually think the biggest one is typically like rent or housing is where that to me is the biggest leak, because then you introduce this fixed cost that raises your monthly nut that you have to cover. And that is, I think, tougher to deal with. I mean, they're usually more permanent decisions. So I think when people have years where they do well and they increase their fixed costs, and then there may become a stretch of years where you don't do as well, I think you get ahead of yourself there, and that's like a leak. That's a hole that you found, because like income and wealth does not increase in a straight line. It just doesn't, you know.
I think I found the answer. Like as I was listening to you guys, I think I got it, because like to Armand's point, it's not a leak if you enjoy it. If that's what you want to do, it's not a leak. So I think the leak is spending on things that give you external validation from strangers. A car could be one. Your lodging could be one. A Rolex could be one. Shoes, clothes, designer
It's
shit.
like the shit Gary Vee tells people to chill out about.
So I think like if you're buying that because you think people are going to like you more and you're doing it for external validation, then that's a leak. But if you're doing that because if you want to buy the biggest, baddest TV because you want to sit in front of that thing and that's what you enjoy, then that's not a leak. But if you're doing it for the external validation, then it is.
Can I devil's advocate this?
Yeah.
I think in some weird, perverse way, like when you're younger, a car can actually be a better investment for you, or even an investment like than like an apartment, right? Like
I'm shaking my head at Steven as he's
you are
yeah,
shaking
sorry.
it, right? Like okay, so
It's a Steven move. Don't do that.
so hear me out. When you are younger, one of the most critical things I think that you can do is sort of like build a network and make connections. I think it's like a lot more valuable than money when you're younger, like infinitely more valuable than money. One of the nice things about cars versus like an apartment is that it's like it's way easier to flex with a car than it is to flex with like your housing.
Oh man, first of all, I just want to stop you there, because like if somebody's flexing their car on me, I'm immediately discounting them from my network. So like what you're describing is like a way to network, and like we have a good network, and I drive a fucking 2001 Acura. I don't give a shit about a car. So like if somebody comes up with a Lambo expecting me to now respect that they have a Lambo, I'm like, fuck off.
I think I sort of agree with you, and I don't behave this way, but I think we would be ignorant to look at the world and say like, oh, nobody
I've
What if
cares
that
about
car?
these things.
What if that car is akin to what travel is to me?
That's what I was saying. If you enjoy it, it's not a leak.
I'm not
So,
even
great.
talking about it as like an enjoyment. Look, let's get away from cars even, right? Let's talk about something we've talked about before, like something I don't know if all of you've done this in your past, but like I certainly used to go to a lot of nightclubs as a youngin, and I spent
Nightclubs as a youngin.
ungodly amount of
Well,
money.
hey there, bud.
Yes, used to go to the discotheque with my friends and just party
Half
down.
naked girls dancing all over you and ordering champagne. Steven, is that what you were doing?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No,
Can we go into detail?
Nick definitely didn't do any of that.
Who did it better, Nick or Steven?
I don't know. I
of
spent ungodly amounts of money. I will
Fortunately, I
say,
didn't know any of you then. So.
yeah, thank God we weren't teammates back then. Because
I've done it with Nick, haven't done it with Steven. So Nick does it well, let me tell you.
we spent a lot of money doing that, and I would say most of them I could probably take back and invest it in apartment complexes.
You still wish you'd always done it like 3 times,
but
right?
there was like 35% of those scenarios where I was like, it was so worth it.
Right?
Yeah. So I don't know.
Even just 3 times.